Thank you for making it today. You're welcome back. You can tell us how your yesterday's session went for you and what you expect from today's session. Please raise your hand and speak, or type it in the chat as we wait for other members to join us.
Hello, everyone. This is Joseph speaking, actually. Pal, you've given me the mic.
Yes.
I was thinking that somebody else will talk today, now that I talked yesterday. But anyway, now that I'm here, good evening, everyone. Yesterday was a good session, actually. I learned some practicability on how testing is done using the Postman tool, and also I learned something about the APIs, the SOAP and the RESTful, including the Django framework. So hopefully, I hope that today's lesson is also, or the today's session is also going to be somehow practical, just like the yesterday's session, and probably we are going to capture a lot. And I just want to maybe to remind Daniel that he should be reminded about, he said that we will review some of the issues which were raised sometimes back. So probably if he will get time, maybe before the sessions end today or tomorrow, he should take that one into note. Otherwise, hopefully we'll enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Joseph. I'm glad the session went well for you. Yes, Fahad, you can speak.
Yes. Good evening. Yesterday, just making just the outline for yesterday's session. We actually looked at APIs and the different types of APIs. That was the REST and the SOAP API. And we did tests, API tests, but we only did tests on the REST APIs, on how to test the Django API. Is it JSON API? REST JSON API in Django. We tested that in Django manually and then using the Postman. That's all I got in yesterday's session. Maybe I'm hoping to get more in today's. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Fahad. Thank you, Fahad. Yes, I can see in the chat, Bronwyn says the sessions this week so far have been very really informative and full of insight. What other ways can one work with Tunga whilst leading up to 3 years experience that is needed? For that, Tunga is working on something to do with internships, because we'd like to create value for developers. So it is still in the process, but yes. That aside, you can be following us such that every time we have any of these informative sessions, when we have boot camps or hackathons, you're able to join in. I'm going to share links for our LinkedIn, our YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, so that you can follow us, and whenever we have any of these sessions, you can join in. Yes. Then Emmanuel says yesterday's session was good. I got to know about Postman and API. Everything is actually new to me. I hope to get along with the help of the recordings in due time. Yes, Emmanuel. Yeah, you'll have a link. Yes, I see you're excited about the internship. It's still in the, we're still working on it, but yes, I think we've given some time. We've been given some time. I think we can begin. So, oh, someone, yeah, Orem has something to say. Hi, Daniel. Yesterday's session was wonderful. However, it took some of us, to be specific time to connect how you got from the terminal to the IDE and back to other programs. I wish, hold on. I wish today you could do it step by step with more ease in explaining the practical concepts for the beginners and those who are not familiar with a specific language, Python, and the environments being used. Thank you for the informative session so far. Daniel, I think you'll be working on that today to help out but otherwise, I'd like to open today's session. You're welcome back. Thank you for being here. Today, Daniel will be taking you through testing with Travis or continuous integration. Yesterday, you all, I see you all remember what you went through. The session with using testing in Django and testing in Postman. Yes, we're excited for today. I think, Daniel, I'll hand over to you to begin.
Thank you so much, Paul, and we'll be back, everyone. It's good to really have you back for this session. So today's session will be centered on Travis, which is used for continuous integration, as we spoke about it from the beginning. However, I also want to give a brief recap because all of these things are actually connected from day one and up until where we are today, and which is why yesterday's session was very interesting for most of you because you're able now to connect the missing dots. So I just want to give a brief recap on what we have covered so far before we can start on something new today. Not very new because we looked at it on Tuesday. So we had a glimpse of Travis and then some Circle CI. Then time didn't allow us to look at cover roles. However, we shall look at it today since both of them are linked together. Then there was a question as well about how to get this code or to fork it from GitHub and then to run it. So we'll be able to also do that step by step. So yes, hopefully that will bring most of us up to speed. So without losing any second, I'd like to start with a recap of what we have looked at. So we have looked at quite a lot from the beginning. We started with basically looking at software testing, and we say that for software testing, we basically want to make sure that we are building the right product and we're building the product right. So that basically is a goal of testing. It's a process we saw in the software development lifecycle, which comes after implementation. So we test our system, and once our tests are successful, we are able to roll out the project into production. And we also saw that if tests fail, then we cannot push our application into production environment or a live environment for other users, the public, to access. So we looked at different bugs that can happen, and we got to know that the name bug comes from actually a moth that got stuck in a computer all the way back in Harvard. And that's how we got the name software bugs, which a lot of us are familiar with. We looked at bugs being failures or inconsistencies in the system, or anomalies in the products we've built. It could be an error, a problem, or a fault. And then we learned a new term called debugging, which where basically we try to identify these bugs in our system and we try to eliminate them. So we looked at different testing, software testing principles, where we looked at verification, validation, testing itself, and debugging, which we've talked about. So verification and validation basically are building the right product and building the product right respectively. So that's what both of them are. And then we also realize that anyone can do testing. So it can be the end user who does testing on the system, which of course translates to black box testing because they don't know the internal workings of the system. It can be the project lead, a project manager. It can be a software tester with someone who specifies in testing, or it can be the developer. So for this whole session, we have been looking at testing, which is done by the developer. So for people who want to do quality assurance, you'll have to, do more than this. But this particularly is meant for the developers. However, it's not limited to the developers. So you can just build onto this if you're into QA. We also looked at the different types of testing. So we talked about manual testing, which is done without using any automated tool or any scripts. I think we've looked at this practically now versus automation testing or test automation, where the tester writes scripts and uses other software to test the software. I think we've looked at both of these practically. This is just basically a recap of what we have done. Then in the testing methods, we also talked about black box testing, which is basically where the tester has no knowledge of the internal workings of the application. And then we talked about, so testing with Postman, like we did yesterday, is an example of black box testing, because clearly we did not have, we did not use any code in our Postman yesterday. We're basically getting the get methods, post, patch, and all that without having any code. However, we were able to see that Postman can generate this code for us, and then we're able to paste it in our IDE. Someone was asking, how did we connect to that? We'll get to that in a minute. We looked at white box testing, whereby we have the internal knowledge of internal logic, or basically we know the structure of the code. So this is what we did with Git locally on our machine. That was on Tuesday. For those who missed, worry not, we shall share the video for this. Once it's ready, it will be live on YouTube. Then we looked at gray box testing. Basically gray box, so when you mix black and white, then you get some bit of gray. So gray box testing is a mixture of black box and white box, meaning you have some knowledge of the internal structure of the system, not so much. Yeah, so that is what gray box testing is. We looked at the different software testing levels, where we had functional testing and non-functional testing, and we're able to identify that functional testing is actually testing features of our software, right? So we looked under this. We looked at unit testing, we looked at integration testing, system testing, regression testing, user acceptance, and interface testing. And this has been our main focus, really, for this particular bootcamp in the interest of time. Then we also had a look at the non-functional testing, basically, which tests for which does not test for features of the application. So the non-functional requirements of an application, such as documentation testing, installation testing, performance testing, where we looked at load testing, stress testing, security testing, and reliability testing. So we had a look at all of these on day one. And we had to, for day two, we had to install certain things before we could look at things practically. So we used Visual Studio Code for this session on Tuesday. Then we installed, but however, you can install any text editor. We also installed Python 3.6, I think. And then we had Git installed locally on our machines, Pip for our package manager, and then the operating system really doesn't matter. Then later on, we installed Postman and Django, which we used for, which we've been using since Monday. Yeah, so we looked at that practically, and we'll dive into that for a bit. I just want to bring us up to speed for those that missed yesterday's session. We looked at APIs and Postman, and we're able to talk about what an API is. We said an API is basically a system-to-system interface. So basically a user interface for one system using another system. So an interface would be what we're using currently. Let's say Zoom, we're able to present our screen and all that. But then how does a system communicate to another system? That was through API. So we use the example of your mobile bank, your bank's mobile banking system trying to communicate to your mobile money. And Joseph from Kenya was able to give us an example of M-Pesa. Thank you so much, Joseph, for that example. I think it was able to enlighten us all. And we say that for one application to use another application, you send requests. So you request for certain information. We saw the different types of requests yesterday with get, put, patch, post methods, and even the delete method. We looked at quite a number of them practically, and we shall do a quick recap on that. And then after the request has been sent, we were getting some sort of feedback with our status codes showing whether we are successful, whether we found the files, or whether there was a certain error that was code. We looked at the different types of APIs, local APIs, which are used by the operating system to provide services to application programs. We looked at program APIs, which are based on the remote procedure calls. And then our focus has been on the web APIs or the web services, where we looked at SOAP and REST API, as Elijah reminded us earlier on. And we looked at the differences between SOAP and REST APIs. So yesterday, our focus was mainly on Postman. And yes, we say Postman is a tool for testing APIs, basically. It was developed in 2012, and it has gained a popularity among different companies and software developers. So the icon is of a man doing the moonwalk by Michael Jackson. And it's orange in color, as we saw yesterday. We saw the advantages of using Postman, and then we went directly into it. So this is actually what you see on your screen is what Postman is, the interfaces of Postman that we looked at yesterday. But for now, I would like us to go to start this from GitHub, and then see how we can fork this project, and then how to run it step by step. Yeah, then we shall look at the different tests practically. And then in the last maybe 30 or 40 minutes, we'll be looking at how to run this on Travis for continuous integration, where we build continuously, we test and deploy. Yes, that is a recap of basically what we have looked at for the past 3 days. And so today we'll be looking at continuous integration with Travis, Circle CI, and cover roads. Any questions so far before we proceed?
Hello.
Yes, yes.
Can you share the URL for GitHub so that I can get the same?
All right, let me share. Oh, it has been shared in the chat.
Thanks.
Okay, if there are no questions, then I think we can get started already. The link is in the chat. So the link will send you directly to what you see on the screen here, which is basically the project we have used for this particular session. So I'm going to show you how to clone or fork this project and run it from scratch with help of our README file. So if you look on the top, I hope everyone has opened this up. So if you look at the top where my cursor is on the top right, you'll see the fork button. I think we've had 18 forks already. Yeah, so just click on that. So once you click it, you're able to choose where you want to put it. Since I already have this, you simply click fork, and then it will be able to update the branch for you. So once you have forked the project, the next step is to run in the command line. So you just copy that very link and then go to the terminal. So once you're in the terminal, just try to open maybe a folder where the work is actually going to be. So I guess you all know these commands for opening different directories. So what I have done is to delete the project I had already that we were testing yesterday. So now, once you are done, the first thing is to clone the project, as you can see there. So I'm just sharing the command with you in the chat in a bit. The command to clone. So after cloning the project, we now want to open it on our text editor. So now you can see that our project has been created. Remember, I deleted it earlier on. So now we want to open this with our Visual Studio Code. So when you come to Visual Studio Code, you simply see where the file is. And now what we're going to do is to open the folder where our file is. These have been canceled because I deleted them, but now I have recreated it. So our project is my test. So we just click open, and then it's able to open this on a new window. Just yes, I trust these users since it's yourself. And then the project is able to load. So when you, the next step now is to open the terminal. And so now we are going to make the migrations. So that is a command to make migrations. It's also available on the README file. So after making migrations, we then run Python 3 manage py .migrate to actually create the database. So I'll just copy that in the chat for you as well. So at this point, you have to also install the Pip libraries. And remember, we indicated this in the requirements.init file. So it's going to install all of them. Yeah, so once the libraries have been installed, then you'll be able to run the server. And now we run the command to run the server. So it's still the same, Python 3 manage.py run server. Manage.py is our main file.
No, we can't, Daniel. Daniel? Daniel, we cannot hear you. Daniel, you're on mute. If you're speaking, you're on mute. All right, as Daniel changes his mic, maybe if you have any questions at this point, this is your time to ask. I guess there's no questions so far. Let's give Daniel a few more minutes, and as he changes his mic.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome back, Daniel. Yes, now we were able to hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. I just had my audio, I think, got interrupted. So you're not able to hear me, but you're still able to see my screen. Yeah, so we had reached the point of running the server where we get this link from actually. the 127.0.0.1 on that running on the port 8000. So that is actually the command for the local host. So when you run this command, then it brings you to this interface for Django admin or Django REST framework, which we used yesterday. So this is basically the general setup for the whole project. I hope we're all able to reach this point. Yeah, so we're doing it step by step now, such that we're able to follow through much easily before we can go into other things. So from there, we're able to now run this project on Postman. We did local tests. I'll be showing you in a bit, but let me first show you on Postman. So we had our GET requests yesterday. So we're trying to get the users from our Django application. As you can see here, that's a GET request on the URL. And then we also looked at if you look down, then you're able to see a user with ID 4. You're able to see the full name, the password, and basically any other user we have in the system. The admin is also available with ID number 1. And remember, we're not supposed to delete the admin. Yeah, so we also looked at the post method, and we saw that we disabled the post method. So when you try to send, we get an error of not allowed because we disabled post requests in our code. Then looked at the retrieve, where we're able to get users by ID. And if you look for a user of ID 7, then you're not going to find them. And the error or the status code is 404. But if you look for user with ID 1, you're able to find them. So retrieve, we're trying to get particular data here. Then looked at the put. So we said put is where you update everything about the user, every attribute of the user. And we're able to see who can update the last name, full name, password, and all the other details. Then we looked at the patch. Patch is where we do partial updates. So we are updating maybe a full name only or last name. So if you're wondering where these users are from, these users are in the application that we just forked from GitHub. And we can either way add more users into our system, delete them, update the information fully using put. You can even delete them after that, or you can edit them using the patch, the put, whichever you want to do. So this we looked at yesterday, and if you're wondering what this is Postman, that is used for API testing. And so we're able to see the status codes and different other things. Yeah, so that is what we looked at yesterday. Any questions? So this here is Visual Studio Code. I see there are no questions, so I'll just continue. So this is how our project will look like. So in the My Test folder, we have 2 folders. One is called Tests, and then one is called Users. So under Tests, we have 2 folders. One which is called Integration, that holds our integration tests. We're able to see that integration tests basically is testing when the different units have been put together. And then unit testing tests for particular features of the application. So we're able to see the different files or the different folders in our application and why they are the way they are. So we also mentioned that test files have to start with the name test underscore such that the PyTests, which is a testing framework for Python or Django, can identify these files as test files. So if you name them normally, then they will be ignored. I think that question was raised. So if you look into right now we're in the integration folder, you're able to see that the file tests underscore users is what contains our integration tests. So if you just look at it, then yes, this is how it looks like. We import JSON, we import PyTest, which is a testing module, and then we also import factories from our tests, and we also get users, because these are the users we're going to be using for testing. So we mentioned that our mockup data is in factories, which is being called in this test file. Yes, so you can see we have a username, we have an email and password. This is when you're doing manual testing. So manual testing meaning you're not testing using Postman. So when you're doing it locally, you have to create some kind of user, give them an email and a password, and you're able to test for them. Then we also looked at the unit folder, which is in which is still in the tests folder. And it also contains test underscore utils, which contains the unit tests. And the tests we're using here was the test methods we're using here, what to look for whether a URL is absolute or not. And we say that an absolute URL is one that contains or starts with HTTP or HTTPS, right? And then one that is not absolute is one that does not start with HTTP and HTTPS. And we're able to run this test locally. So let me just try to run it in the terminal. I believe at this point we're all connected. So just give me a second as I run this. So I'm just sharing the command with you in the chat such that you're also able to run these tests on your machine. So here we're able to see that we have run the different tests. So we're able to see which ones have passed and also the percentage of tests that have run. So remember, we're testing for whether a URL is absolute, and we have an assertion here. So you can see whether a URL is absolute or not. And then we have below here, we have that we now have the URLs that we're going to test. So some of them are absolute and some of them are not. So if you check our test, then it runs just fine. I see a question in the chat from Arthur. He says, I had some connectivity issue yesterday. Is it okay if you show the steps about how you can integrate your project with Postman? Yes, I will show that simply how to do it. So yes, Arthur, what you do basically for Postman is, first of all, you install it on your machine locally, right? So this is installed on my machine. So then when you open it, you'll have an interface that looks like this. Then you're able to create a workspace, which you can call Tunga, for example. And then you just can write a summary. It's optional, really. Are you going to work with a team, or is it for the public, or is it personal, private to you only? You can have those options. So you create your workspace. So once you do that, the next thing then is to basically put the URL of the API you want to test. Remember, Postman is for testing web services, right? And so once you get that URL, then you're able to, it's right there. So when you run server, this is what you get. Then you just come and post it in your Postman, and then yeah, you can now make GET requests. So as you can see, we've created a different workspace and we've connected to the same project. I hope that answers your question, Arthur. And remember that also the reason why I like to use Postman a lot is it's able to generate for you this API code for these different requests. And in whatever language you want. So you can do this in PHP, you can do this in Python, whatever language you're comfortable with. So for now we're using Python, so I'll just copy the Python code. It should be down somewhere. Yeah, we have, yeah, then I can copy this and paste it in the GET request in my Visual Studio Code without having to do this manually. So yes, exactly. Now I have the code perfectly generated for me, automatically generated. So for whichever language you're using, you're able to, Postman is able to create this for you manually. So maybe I have done a test for the Django project, default project, but now I would want to write a different unit test, a simple one, which you all understand. I will use addition, basically. So we'll just have a function that will add two different numbers, and then we're going to do that kind of testing. Can someone let me know in the chat whether it's unit test or function or integration test, what we're going to do? I'll just give it some 10 seconds.
Daniel, the question wasn't so clear.
Okay, so the question is, we're going to do a small test for a simple function which is meant to add two numbers. So my question was, is this a unit test or an integration test? You can just unmute Kevin to let us know what kind of test it is and why.
Yes, Kevin, you can speak.
So Kevin says it's unit tests. Arthur also says it's a unit test, and I think we all agree that yes, this is actually a unit test because we're just testing a small unit of the application that we're trying to build. Oluwatobi says unit test and a function. Yes, that is a unit test. Yeah, thank you for following through. So now we are going to write test. We've written our function tests to add a value, and so we're making assertions that assert 1 plus 1 should give you 2. And so is that true or false? So we shall see whether that passes. And 2 plus 3 should also give us 5. Is that true or false? We shall be able to test that in a bit. So just give me a second as I try to set it up. I'll explain it in a bit because maybe it was a bit hard to follow on through with the testing of absolute and non-absolute URLs. So we can use still this example, and then we can run tests on it locally and on Postman or even up to GitHub. However, you'll have to commit these changes that have been made because they may not be live on the GitHub at the moment. So if you have seen, if you're looking at your screen, we're now in the utils file, which contains our functions. So we've written a function called add value, which takes on 2 parameters, A and B. And then it's going to return the sum of A and B. So we want to test this function to make sure that it actually returns the sum. So in our tests underscore utils, where we're testing the utils file, we have written a test function called test add value. So we are testing the function we have written to make sure that it gives us the desired result. So yes, I had not properly called the function. I was adding it manually. So yes, we have to use the function add value to add to add 1 and 1, then to add 2 and 3. So they should, of course, we know they should give us 5, but is that true? Then we shall also do a small test on it. So if you notice for this assertion, the last one, we're passing the parameters 3 and 6, which should give us 9, but we're saying it should not be 10, right? So we're going to test for this. So let me just run this in a bit. Always endeavor to save such that you have your latest work being tested. So we are now running our tests. I already shared the command with you. So we just give our tests some time to run. Oh yeah, now it's done. So you can see that our tests passed. It was under the unit folder. It's called test underscore utils, and the function, the test function that we wrote is test underscore add value, and we're seeing that our test has passed. So when you go back to the code on Visual Studio, you're able to see that 1 plus 1 was 2, 2 plus 3 was 5, and then 3 plus 6 is not 10, and that's why it passed. If we were to change this, then our test can fail. We can still make the test fail. So if we say that 3 plus 6 is not 9, then our test should be able to fail. So please endeavor to always save. So we just want to run the tests again using the same command I sent in the chat. So we just give it some time to pass to run the tests. But already we can see that our test add value failed. So 3 plus 6 should be 9, but we said it should not be 9 in our function. So 9 is not equal to 9 is of course false. And that's why our test has failed. So this is an example of a unit test that we have done. The previous one we did was with the absolute URLs, where we were testing for whether a URL is absolute, meaning does it start with HTTP or HTTPS, or it doesn't. So the URLs that do not are then not absolute. The test we have run now is to just add 2 values. We wrote a function, add value, to sum up 2 parameters, and then we have been able to test that. Yeah, so basically that is how we run tests. So you write your functions, or you add other different features, write a test method for them, and then run the tests. So if we change that to 10, it's going to run again. So let me just save and run it. Yes, so you can see now our test has passed. So we shall now move to Travis to see how this can run. So Travis is used for continuous integration. So after, of course, running your project locally, you now push it to GitHub. And after pushing it to GitHub, we then install the different, we connect our GitHub account to Travis if it's not already connected, or Circle CI, and then we're also able to connect it to Coveralls, such that we're able to see code coverage and everything, and we're able to run builds. So when you come to the Travis website, I'm already logged in, but usually it will just ask you to sign up. So you can just sign up with your GitHub already, or Bitbucket, GitLab, Assembler, depending on what you're using. But I'm using GitHub, so you can sign up with GitHub. When you sign up with GitHub, this is the interface, this is how your account will look like. And then you're able to sync Travis to your GitHub account. You'll of course give it some time. Give it some time, and then you're able to, once it has synced with your GitHub, then you're able to pick the project from your GitHub, as you can see, and then we're able to make a build for this. Yes, so now it's building our project, which it has picked from GitHub. And in those simple steps, that's how you connect your project to Travis. It's not so complicated after all. So yeah, just give it some time to build. Arthur is asking why we chose Circle CI over why we chose Travis over CI. I'm not sure both, but we're just initially working with Travis because ideally they do the same thing really. Maybe I thought the difference is that Travis has a paid version. Then also Circle CI is free. So that could maybe be the difference. But I already have Travis on my account, so it's okay. And you can see how it's going to do the same thing, basically run the tests. But now this is for our project on GitHub, not the one that's locally. So at this point, we have committed our project to GitHub. So you can see the same commands, the same tests are running, and I can still show you where our test is for a bad URL, as you can see there, at least an absolute URL. So for our new function, it's not here because I haven't committed it really, to GitHub. So that is also an example for you to show that you have to commit before you can test. So hence the name continuous integration. So continuously keep on coding, deploying, and testing using these different systems or tools. So you can notice that all these 16 tests passed and they ran for 42 seconds. So you can see that previously, while I was preparing this for you, some of the tests failed for one reason or the other, and I had to debug. So you can see some are 10, others are 9, 2. So that is how the tool would work, and shows you the color green for, of course, the good health of the test, and red if there's an issue. So you'll have to work on these kinds of issues. So now what we do not have actually is code coverage. So we can see that our test has passed. So now we want to integrate this with cover roles to make sure that we can get some bit of code coverage. I had already done this, so we can see our code coverage is 13%. So now it's the same thing really for cover roles and Travis. So you get started free of charge and sign in with your GitHub account. So yeah, it will ask you to make payments, but I already made the payments. So we'll simply move on to the next step where we'll try to integrate our project. So you're able to search for the repo. So once you find the repo, then you can activate it as you're seeing on the screen.
Daniel, we have some questions in the chat. Can we take them now?
I'll just take them after demonstrating coveralls because I'm almost done here. So yeah, so this is what it will bring you to once you have fully integrated with the coveralls. So the next step then is to link coveralls to Travis to get code coverage. So how we do this, remember we talked about the config.yaml file, which I'll be showing you in the Visual Studio in a bit. So which is used by Travis. Circle CI also has its own, which is config.yaml. So, but for Travis, it's Travis.yaml, which we saw previously. So this is how you connect it to how you connect Travis to coveralls. So using this Travis.yaml file, so you can see that once it's successful, it connects to coveralls right there. And that's simply how it is stated. So all these commands, I think we've used all of them in today's session and the sessions prior. So once that is done, then we have fully connected to Travis. Okay, yeah, so that is basically it. So when you go to Travis and make your different builds, coveralls will automatically detect it as though using a trigger, right? So yeah, I'm just run a different build for now. You can see now that when build number 17, let's give it some time to run. So let's just give it some time to completely build. Yeah, so it's installing and building the project basically. As you can see, let's just give it some time. So you can see that our tests have successfully run, and now we can see the command has been submitted to is being submitted to coveralls right there, as we had set up in our Travis.yaml file. Yeah, so we can now see whether coveralls has read it. Okay, we detected that this repo isn't badged, so we have to add the embed code. Okay, I've run into a small issue, so I'll just need a minute to resolve it. But meanwhile, I can be taking on the questions. Someone is asking, Travis, is open source, doesn't that cause some issues with performance, security, vulnerabilities, technology limitations, and so on? Yeah, so I think Arthur has answered that for us. And Travis also has a private repo, so that should work just fine. It's not a threat, Fahad. So I'm just going to rerun the project such that it can build properly. But meanwhile, if you have any other questions, you can ask them. I hope we have followed through properly. We're actually coming towards the end of the session because I'm just going to configure or debug what's wrong with the cover rules within a minute. And then, yeah, I'll be able to close the session. Arthur wants to know the purpose of cover rules. Yeah, so cover rules is the main purpose of cover rules, as you hear, is for code coverage. So what do we mean by code coverage? What which parts or what percentage of your code, let's say we're looking at a file, utils.py, I want to know, and has maybe 30 lines of code. So I want to know what percentage of this code or these lines of code have been tested. Is it 100%, 75%, and so on and so forth? So that's basically what cover rules does in a nutshell. I hope that answers your question, Arthur. We're going to look at it practically. I'm just trying to debug the small issue we ran into. Okay, so I've been able to debug that. It was just something small that was causing problems, but someone was asking what Travis is for. So I'm in coverall, so we're able to see that our code coverage is 84%. Yeah, and we're able to see the code coverage for each file that has been tested. So you can see that for the API file, the coverage is 100%. And then you can see the colors. Basically, green means that the particular code has been tested. So you can see that the function create has been tested, which is for post, as we talked about yesterday. The classes have been tested, lines 1 to 7 have been tested, and the comments are not tested because, of course, they are ignored. So that is that file. Then we can move on to a different file. So it also shows you the build number, or how many times we have built this application, number of builds for it. We can see that for this particular file, the utils file, some lines were not tested and others were. So you can see that the ones that were not tested are in red. So we did not test that function. And you can see that some of these, yes, this was not tested. So that's why it reduces our code coverage to 91.6%. And then overall code coverage for what we are testing then reduces to 84%. So as you can see on the right there. So basically that's what coveralls does. So we've seen how to connect to it, how to link it up with our project, and then how it will show code coverage. And even on GitHub, you'll be able to, when you're looking at the project now on your GitHub account, have so many tabs. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so when you're looking at the project on your GitHub, then you're also going to see the code coverage for it. So it is 13%, as you can see for now. So you just copy the embed code, then throw that in your GitHub like that. Then once you commit these changes, then our coverage should change to 84%. Yeah, so you can see now that this is 84%. So a hack to this, you can, when you're looking at someone's GitHub project, you're able to know whether they're using coveralls or Travis, simply if their code has this sort of coverage information. Yeah, that brings us to the end of today's session. I'll be taking on questions at the moment.
We already have a question from Fahad. He says, is Travis a platform for optimization of microservices Docker too?
Yes, of course, Fahad. You can integrate this through your YAML file, just like we have done for this particular project. Yeah, but that would come after, of course, containerization with Docker. I hope that answers your question, Fahad.
If you have any questions or anything to say, you could raise your hand and you'll be given rights to speak.
Okay, I see that there are no further questions. Thank you all for participating, and thank you, my colleague Power, for coordinating the session and following up with our participants for this bootcamp. Please continue to share your questions in the WhatsApp group, and we shall be able to follow up on them. Tomorrow is our last session, so please come in with all the questions that you have, and we'll be able to sort them out. I hope today's session has been fruitful for you all. Thank you all. Over to you, Pa. Yes, there's a question from an anonymous attendee who says, thank you, Afedra. Do you have any tasks for us? So my task for you would be to write a simple test like we did, and then write a function, write a test function for it, commit this to GitHub, test it with Travis or Circle CI, and also with cover roles. So that would be my task. I would be glad to see some demos tomorrow. Otherwise, that happens to be our last question. Thank you, everyone. And then see you tomorrow, same time, same place for our last session. Please come with all the questions that you have. And then I'll be able to answer them tomorrow. Thank you so much, and have a great evening. See you tomorrow for the last session. Bye for now.